intelligence at work. There's going to be a couple of code-based solutions in there, just two, and they're just to kind of give you some ideas. But for the most part, we're going to be dealing with the Power Platform. So a little bit about myself. I'm a pre-sales solution architect for a company in Pennsylvania in the United States. It's a suburb of Philadelphia called Bluebell, Pennsylvania, and the company's name is Anexinet. I've been working with SharePoint since I started my career back in 2005. And if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn and Twitter are probably your best options. So it's at SharePoint JR there, and that's my LinkedIn profile page. Additionally, as far as the community goes, I organize a local user group in our area. It's the Tri-State Office 365 user group, and we meet the second Tuesday of every month. So because of this pandemic, we have gone virtual. We've been virtual for a few months now, and it looks like we're going to be virtual at least 3 to 6 months into the coming year. So we meet, again, second Tuesday of the month, and it's Eastern time. So there's that. And then, there's the Twitter handle for that one if you want to follow any content or see what speakers are coming up there. I'm also the organizer of M365 Philly Virtual, along with Manpreet Singh and Mike Mikhailian, and this year, Tom Daly has helped us out. So that happened in July, and that's the Twitter handle for that one. And I also do a little bit of blogging. So all of the presentations that you're going to see, or all of the demos that you're going to see today, I have blogged about, I believe, most of them. So you could see the step-by-step on the blog if you're interested in building them out yourself. Okay. So what we're going to cover, we're going to do an overview of Azure Cognitive Services. Specifically, we're going to talk about text analytics, computer vision, and language understanding. And then we're going to show some demos in those areas. And then towards the end, we'll start seeing some demos using Power Virtual Agents and AI Builder. So let's start with the cognitive services. So this is the cognitive services site, azure.microsoft.com, services, cognitive services. And if we scroll down, we have the APIs that fall into these 5 buckets here. So we have decision, language, we have speech, vision, and web search. So under decision, you have things like content moderator, which can be used to flag things like offensive language or racy images that appear. Under language, we have things like language understanding. So we'll talk a little bit about this one, but this is the idea of being able to pass the service a sentence, and the sentence understanding what it is that you intended to talk to the service about. There's also Q&A Maker, which is it's like an FAQ bot. So you can give it a series of question and answer, and when a person poses the question to the bot, the bot will figure out what question most likely matches the question that the user asked and sends that response back, which is pretty cool. And then the text analytics, which has things like sentiment analysis, which we're going to see in the very first demo. I'll show text analytics. And then under speech, you have things like speech to text and text to speech, straightforward stuff there. Under vision, you have the computer vision, where it's detecting what we're seeing in the image. You have form recognizers, you have ink recognizer, which will take some scribblings, your handwriting, and figure out what it is that you're trying to, what it is you're writing. Actually, I could probably, we'll open that one up in a second here. And then under web search, this is all the Bing stuff. So Bing auto suggest, custom search, image search. If you were to go to Bing right now, in the search bar, there's an icon that looks like a camera. And if you click on that, you can upload an image, or if you're doing it on a mobile device, you can actually use your phone's camera to take a picture, and the Bing search will search for images that look similar to what it is that you're taking a picture of. So let's just take a quick look at the ink recognizer, since we were talking about that one. Here's an example, and all of these different categories here, for the most part, there's an example, and in some cases you can try it out yourself. So you could see here someone's handwriting, right? So if I try to scribble my name in here and hit analyze, it's the first time I didn't get it right. Let's see, let's try it again. Oops. There you go. So, this was just in the trial. I didn't have to train it to understand my handwriting. And that's the one good thing about these services, is that a lot of these services, you don't really have to go through the effort of training. You don't need to be a machine learning expert. You don't need to be a data scientist to get started with a lot of these services. So, feel free to poke around on the Cognitive Services site and see some of the examples that they have in there, and that might spark some ideas for you. So if you want to create one of these services or stand up one of these services, you would just go to Azure and you could just type in, Cognitive Services, and it'll take you to this page here. If you hit the Create Cognitive Service button, you'll get a menu of all of the different services that are available to you. So you can see there's a series of bot services up top. This section here is the section that we're interested in, the cognitive services. You have machine learning services, you have automated ML, you have RPA services, robotic process automation, you have data labeling, data prep, knowledge mining, ML operations, and I feel like this section might be new. That's the beauty of Azure. Every time you go in, it looks different. There's something new in there. So under the cognitive services over here, we can click on See More. And you can see a pretty long list of stuff, right? So they have face, a face service for like face recognition or other services there. You have the Q&A maker. Here's the Bing search stuff, the content moderator, computer vision, here's text analytics. So if we pick any one of these, I'll pick, I don't know if I've ever clicked on face. I may have clicked on face. By now, I've probably clicked on face. They all are pretty similar. You pick your subscription, you pick your resource group, you pick your region, you give it a name, and you pick a pricing tier. There's typically a free pricing option in here. There is a limit. I don't know if it might be a limit of 1. I'm not sure actually. So you might have, if you're playing around, you might have to kill one of the services and then go back and create a new one with a free. But the steps pretty much are the same. Once you set this up, the service is up. There's really not much configuration you have to do there. It will take you to a page, and I'm not going to create a service here because this is my work tenant, but it takes you to a page with some like quick steps for your service. And it's always, or at least every time that I've done it, it's been 3 steps. The first step, it just gives you a link where you can get the 2 keys that you're going to need. The keys are just going to let you be able to call the service that they're going to be using. So you get the keys. The second step is your endpoint. So whatever region you pick, the URL is typically the same, right? So it's it'll have the region at the beginning of the URL. So you have your keys, you have your endpoint, And then the third section or step or whatever you want to call it on that page is the documentation showing you what it is that you can do with it, how to call the service, and some examples. That's all you need to do. So if you have an Azure admin who's responsible for creating these services for you, that person can do these steps and they're done. They'll give you the keys, they'll give you the endpoint, and they can walk away. So again, no machine learning experience needed there or anything like that. So let's take a look at some code here. This is something that I built a couple years ago. And actually, it's probably there are better ways to do it now. I think you can use a SharePoint framework now to do the Office add-ins. Let me make this a little bigger here. So, backstory on this one. This is an Outlook add-in that will score the body of an email before you send it out to figure out if it's a positive email or not. And the reason I tried this out the first time, I thought it would be fun to try it out because there was an email that was going around, and some people didn't appreciate the tone of the email, and other people didn't care about the tone, like they didn't see anything wrong with the tone. So I thought it would be fun to try out this service. This was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe by now, probably about 3 years ago. And so I gave it a shot. I set up the service, just the steps that you just saw, and just to walk you through, we start off here by getting the body of the email message. So we're in the mailbox item, and this is the body of the message, and it's getting passed to this function, calculate sentiment. Now this right here comes from the documentation. This tells you how to build the JSON that you're going to be sending to the service, right? So it's expecting a documents at the top, and then inside of documents is the message, right? So I have it all self-contained in here. This is going to be my email message that's in the body of my email. This was the endpoint that was given to me by the service on step 2. And then right here, these are the keys. Security thing, right? So I just have them separated. It's a long key there, but as long as you have the keys and the endpoint, and then you follow what, you provide the headers, you're going to accept some JSON, you're going to pass the data, and then here's what you do with the results. So I'll tell you what the problem is with my service in a second, but one thing to know about these services is that they always return a score, or they generally return a score. You pass in some data, it gives you a number. That's typically what happens. So in this case, we're getting a sentiment score, and then I decide what to do. At the bottom here, I have a set chart function, which just creates a chart on the form. So if I hit start here, it's going to open up Outlook for me. Oh, I think it just kicked me out. No, never mind. All right, so here's Outlook. I'm gonna hit new message here. I had multiple desktops up, and it moved me over to a new desktop. So hopefully everybody can still see my screen here. So we have in the body of the message here, I want to say this presentation is awesome. And then down here at the bottom, you're going to see in the menu there, this is my app. This is positivity score. So I click on that and it's going to score. It should be pretty high. So 94%. So if I go the other way and I say this presentation is horrible and score it again, 6%. If I say this presentation was okay, it should be somewhere in the middle. Okay. So now the problem with this, and this was proof of concept that I have never really shared it with anyone outside of like a blog post or anything like that. So I can say this presentation is awesome. This presentation is horrible. And we'll get a 15%. But then if I switch it around, we'll get 84%. So the reason is I think I need to score them separately and aggregate them together. I never got around to trying it a different way, so I haven't really been too worried about it. But if it's something that's of interest to you, you can certainly give it a try and see if you can build one that takes into account the entire message and scores it. Okay, so that first example was the text analytics and using an Outlook add-in to get it started. So let me see real quick here. I have my deck went away. That's what happened when my screen switched. So okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is image recognition. So in image recognition, I have these images that I use. These were just fun little images that I was using for background images, meeting with some coworkers outside of work hours. So you can see they go strange. And then this one here was one of the Microsoft sample images. So we have a wide variety of images here. I'm going to drag and drop them into this document library. And for this one, we're using the image recognition service. So we have a flow that service is kicking off, and it should be running now. And what we're doing here is we're waiting for a file to be created in this image recognition library. And then we're doing the typical SharePoint steps where you have to get the metadata and the properties of the file so that we can update it later. And then in here you have the analyze image. So this is the action that is pointing to your cognitive service. When you set this up the first time, it's going to ask you for some of that information that we set up in Azure. And once it has access to that service, it's going to ask you for what type of content, right? So you have an image URL or image content. Since I have the file in SharePoint, I have the content, and I'm just going to pass in the file content here. We're going to add an action here just to show you where they are. If you type in cognitive, you could see some of them here. So we have computer vision, content moderator, custom vision, and faced API. So in this example, we're using computer vision, and then you could see analyze image, and then there's a bunch of other different things that you can use. There's some OCR stuff, there's some tagging. So there's a lot of different actions that the services expose, or that Power Automate exposes, leveraging those services. So once I set up that it's going to be image content and that we're going to be passing in the file, down here, I'm just taking all of the tags and stringing them together. At the time that I built this demo, that was kind of the only option that I had. And actually, I should probably take a step back here. The reason I built this demo, this was actually a proof of concept for a customer of mine. They had offices across the United States, a few hundred offices across the United States. Each of those offices had their own local marketing activities. And then they had a corporate office, which is in Pennsylvania. And that corporate office had a overarching marketing department. And that marketing department would handle taking all of the images that they wanted used, like approved images that they wanted their other offices to be able to use. And they wanted to have it in a central place. But the problem they were having was that they weren't able to create meaningful tags or captions for all of the different locations. And it was very time consuming, right? So if you're creating if you have a library that's going to be used by hundreds of offices, and you have a small team of people that are coming up with tags and captions, and one city might be looking for an image by one name, and another city might be looking for that same image but searching for something different. It was just like a clumsy experience for them. So they asked me about this while they were looking into some other digital asset management solutions. And I threw this together during my lunch break. So within an hour, I figured out what I needed to do to get this up and running. So back to this, right? So we create a file in SharePoint, or we upload a file into SharePoint. We get some metadata. We pass it to this service. So the service figures out what is in this image. We aggregate all the tags into one single string. And then down here, we have the caption that comes from the service. And what we're saying here is for that item ID, that document's item ID, we want to pass in the caption and we want to pass in the tags. So if you recall, I already uploaded the images, so this should be done. And you can see all my images are tagged and captioned. So this one here, this one here is the painter Bob Ross. And you can see, let me see if I, so you could see, this is his painting that he's standing in front of. There's his paintbrush. So if we go back here, the service can figure out who celebrities are in an image. So it identified that it was Bob Ross, and it wrote in here Bob Ross standing in front of a mountain. And then you could see some of the tags that are here: person, man, outdoor, standing, smiling, mountain, river. So it found a bunch of keywords. Now, the service is pretty good, but sometimes there's misses in here, right? So it has eating. He's not eating at all. Table. There wasn't a table in that shot. And those are the two misses there. If we go down to, let's see, a restaurant. So this is a restaurant here. It said a room filled with furniture and a table in a restaurant. So the service was able to do that in the time that it took me to explain to you what the flow was doing and how to get that up and running. So if you think about it, the customer that I had with hundreds of different locations could just upload the images, let it caption and tag it, and then maybe they go through and do some cleanup work, as opposed to doing all the tags, finding out that their first attempt was incorrect or had some issues, and then going back and making the edits then. Okay. So far we've seen text analytics and we've seen computer vision. The next thing that I want to talk about is language understanding. And I'm going to show a little bit of code, but I don't have the demo environment for this one. So I'm not going to be able to show all of it here, or show it running. Actually, let me turn off the old one that I had up and running first. All right, so here is the code. This is using the Microsoft Bot Framework. And And the service that's being used is the Language Understanding Intelligence Service. So the way that service works is there is a portal that you can set up your different intents. So what it is the person intends to talk to you about. So in my case here, I have a greeting intent, a reserved room intent, a help desk ticket intent. So you can see all the intents are here. And this is also older. There's newer versions of the framework, so some of this may have changed. But just going to kind of walk you through it just to give you an idea how it works, right? So when a person sends the initial message to the chatbot, if they say hello, the greeting intent gets triggered. What happens is the word hello gets sent to the service. The service says, okay, this is a 90% probability score that the person is trying to greet you. On the other end, if I say, I'd like to create a help desk ticket, the service will say, okay, it's not a greeting. It's a 70% chance that the person is trying to talk to you about a help desk ticket. And then it tells the bot framework will then say, okay, well, we're going to run this method here, this function here. And then you go down your own code logic here. There's the form dialog, where we have a lot of different, I'm sorry, not this one. Let's see, we got the models, help desk ticket. So here are the questions that are going to be asked to the user, and the bot framework will take your public variables here, and it will ask the question. It will split this out, and it'll ask them, what is your issue severity? What's the service required? If you need to change the sentence, you can put a prompt and tell it what you want it to say instead. And then I go through all the steps of creating the bot. So in this one, this is all like test stuff. So there's some things in here that were from Pluralsight, some things from the bot framework demo site or bot framework documentation. So it's a mishmash of those two things. And then the help desk ticket thing was something that I was piecing together, trying to figure out how this all worked. So, there's a lot of things in here. There's calls to the Microsoft Graph. There's calls to Planner. We're creating a Planner task, and there's a lot of stuff in here. So the steps, it can get pretty involved if you're writing all the code in it. And there are some things in here where at times it can get tricky. I don't know if the newer versions of it have made it easier. I haven't had to write a bot in a little bit now, but the steps can be involved. But if you're a power user, the bot framework is not really an option for you because you're not a developer and you're not going to be able to write all that code. So instead, we have Power Virtual Agents, which it's kind of obviously it's a UI-based approach to creating a chatbot, and asking the questions is similar. It's a similar experience to creating a flow. So one thing to note about Power Virtual Agents is that they change some of the terminology. So where in the bot framework, we are talking about an intent, in Power Virtual Agents, we refer to them as topics. So in here, you can see that I have a help desk topic, a room booking topic, and then all this stuff down here was stuff that was already set up for you when you start working with Power Virtual Agents. So these are all different examples. So if we click into my topic here, we can see that I trained it with just 3 sentences. I need to create a service ticket. I need help. I'd like to submit a ticket. So with the bot framework, you're using language understanding. And again, it's gonna take your sentence and it's gonna figure out, okay, what is this person trying to ask the bot? So in here, I could say, I'd like to create a help desk ticket. And as you can see, you know, none of these say help desk ticket. We see the word help here. We see ticket up here. So if I submit this question or this statement, my bot gets triggered and starts interacting with me. If I go to the authoring canvas, you could see how that is created. So like I said, it's very similar to Flow or Power Automate. And you can go in here and you have different options. You can ask the question, you can add a condition, you can call an action. So an action would be something like calling a flow, or you could just show a message. So right off the bat here, I have show message, and I'm saying hello or hi, I'm the help desk bot. I'm going to walk you through your ticket request. And then it jumps right into asking the question. So please provide a title is the statement that the bot sends back to the user. And you can see that I'm storing the value in a variable that I call help desk title. So let's say my mobile device won't turn on. I noticed that every time I do this demo, I was saying the same thing. My laptop is broken, so let's switch it up a little bit. So my mobile device won't turn on. So my two options here are laptop PC equipment issue or PC software issue. You can add additional options here and it'll create the cards for you. So I have two options here as a user. I can click on this, either one of these, or I can type in what the option is. So in this case, I'm just going to click on it. It's going to save that value. And then it's going to ask me the next question. Is it a high, medium, or low priority? I'm going to say it's a medium priority. And it also accepted it. The one thing that this example doesn't show, since it's language understanding does a little bit more than just understand the intent of what it is that the person is trying to talk to you about. Language understanding also does things like handle type, different types. So if I had something like, if I wanted to book if I wanted to book a hotel room, that's the example that you'll see on the Pluralsight, of course, if it's still available. If you wanna book a hotel room, it'll ask you how many what's the number of people that are going to be in the hotel room, and you can write the number 2, or you can write the word 2, and it will understand what it is, which is fantastic. If you think about it, if you're building a traditional web application, if you're expecting an integer, you're expecting an integer. If you're expecting a string, you want a string. You don't really want to do the conversion of text to integer or integer to text. The bot framework will do that for you. It also is smart enough to do things like understand what it is when a person says.
Could you please mute?
All right, let's see. All right. Okay, we're good? We're good.
I am good.
All right. So if you have a date, you could say, again, when you're dealing with the room reservation or conference room reservation, you could say, I want to book tomorrow, and it will understand what tomorrow is, and it will say September, right now, September 20th, or whatever the next day is. You could say 2 days from today, and it will know to add 2 days to today. So you don't have to do any of the calculations that you would normally do with date times, and sometimes date time, working with date times in code sometimes can get problematic sometimes. the bot framework will handle all of that for you. So going back to this, let's see, last step, can you please provide a brief description? I'm just going to say my tablet doesn't hold a charge. All right. And what's going to happen next is it's going to take all of those values that I provided and it's going to send it back to me as like a confirmation. So you could see, great, thank you. The following information was recorded and a technician will reply to you soon. And then you can see all of my answers here. If you heard all of the dings that were happening in the background, what was happening was there is this flow here that is taking all of my values and performing some steps, assigning the ticket to a technician and doing some other things. I believe I have it open here. Let's see, let's open it up. So the very first step here is take the values from Power Virtual Agents. And then we're going to create an item in a help desk list. We have a value here of not started, but here are all the values that were provided by the user. Then we get the items here. Down here, we do like the assignments or the emails to the technician. So there's a ticket for you, the title that the person provided, the link to the item based on some of the data that I got above. And then down here, it's just different messages at the bottom depending on the severity of the ticket. So if it's a high, if it's a severity of high, it tells the technician, hey, you have 8 hours to respond to this issue. And then down here, you have the item ID that was created in SharePoint returned back to the user as a help desk ticket number. And then down here, you could see your help desk ticket ID is 15. And if we go back to the list here, here's help desk ticket ID 15. And you could see my mobile device won't turn on, PC issue, medium severity, and so on. So I did a similar one when I first learned about Power Virtual Agents. I was actually doing an AI presentation at work, and 20 minutes before the meeting, I put one of these Power Virtual Agents demo together and was able to present it functioning at work. So a power user can build something fairly quickly, especially if it's something simple, which is just like a form collecting solution with maybe a workflow to notify people when an item is created, something as simple as that. Power Virtual Agents is very good at getting you started there. Where one of the things that I built, the service that I built in the 20 minutes was the demo from the Pluralsight site, and that demo, when I built it using the bot framework, I probably spent about 2.5 weeks learning and figuring out how to build it and understanding where I was going wrong and all of that. And then with Power Virtual Agents, I built that in 20 minutes. So there's a big significant time savings. You would want to use, in my opinion, you would want to use the bot framework if you really need control, if you really need to call other services, if you need to, maybe if you're doing something for public consumption or public facing. But if you're doing something internally, which is something small, like form collection stuff, the Power Virtual Agents is actually pretty good. Okay, so that was the chatbots, and the next thing that I want to go into is AI Builder, and what I want to talk about is this form processing. So AI Builder, in this one, you have these five models that you can train. So you have category classification, entity extraction, form processing, object detection, and prediction. Prediction, you can pass in things like sales information. Sales information is the common example that I've seen. I haven't played with this one just yet, or I've started playing with this one, but I haven't gotten a completed solution here. But with prediction, you can do things like go through your customer history and based on the data that's been provided, predict whether someone with similar answers or similar data would purchase your product. So that's the idea there. Entity extraction, that's pulling out things from a sentence. So we have a date here and a location here and a city and a state. Object detection is things like Microsoft has an example where they have a series of images where their logo appears, and object detection will put a little box around where that logo appeared in the image. And then category classification, this is things like tagging what that sentence is. So if it looks like a spam message, it would tag that sentence as spam. But in all of these examples, you have to provide some data that it can learn from. And the one we're going to look at is form processing. So with form processing, we can extract data from documents, and we can use that data with the help of Power Automate. So what I'm going to do, well, the first thing about AI Builder is that it's really good at giving you some examples and walking you through what's needed. So, here's an example of an invoice, and you can see that it's highlighting the different sections. It gives you other examples of a mortgage statement. And this one is a student application. The one thing about these forms, and you'll see in the best practices, is that they recommend that the forms have the exact same layout. So it's a very uniform template that you're going to be working with. It's not going to work well, or probably not at all, if you have different types of layouts in your files that are being uploaded in that particular area. So if you have different templates, you might have to create different form processors for the different templates, just so that the service can accurately get the data. So here's just some more examples, right? You want to have simple documents. You don't want to have too many complex nested tables, merge cells, all that stuff. Okay, so we're going to start by creating one. We'll call this one SPS. We'll create, and it tells you here you're going to need 5 documents with the same layout. So I have 5 documents with the same layout. Let's see. So we're going to add the document, upload from local storage. Here are my 5. Upload. It's going to update these statuses, and we hit close. So these are my 5 invoices, and we want to select the 5 and hit analyze. So let me go back here, and we have one that I've already created. It's the same. So you could, once you have it created and once you have it published, you can do a test. So what I could do is I could take one of the documents that I have already in there, and you'll see an example of all the data that gets extracted. And once the previous step where I was having it analyzed is done, we'll go back and show you how I do this part here. You can see we're extracting these steps here, right? So when we go back, I'll show you where I did it. But one thing to note is that if you remember in the beginning, I think I mentioned it a couple of times now, that these services pretty much give you some sort of score. So in this case, you could see there's a confidence score of 100. It is 100% confident that this 3-digit number is my invoice number based on the location and the formatting and all of that. You can see 100%, 100%. When you have things like overlapping borders, that's when your confidence score starts to dip a little. So you could see 98% confidence score. And it's because the city and the state are overlapping the boundaries. If you have a form, so if you look at like a mortgage statement or some sort of like government documentation, there's usually large spaces that are in very defined boxes. Those are probably the best for this type of solution. But if you have things, just kind of expected to be next to each other, it'll still capture it, but it's just going to let you know that the score is a little bit lower. It also does a good job of recognizing handwritten documents. So I do have one where I wrote in a lot of information. Actually, I could probably show that one. I haven't showed that one in these demos, but I did I was writing at an angle. I was writing very sloppy. You could see I'm writing at an angle, so things are going in the wrong spot. And you'll see that the confidence score is going to be pretty low on some of these. So it didn't get, my A looked like an S to it, so it said 73% confident. You could see the company name and the company address is overlapping, so it was only 60% confident that this was the company name. And then it just gets all over the place because I'm writing all over the place, and it can't figure it out. If you have a document with boxes where the person can clearly write in the lines, it'll work a little bit better. But if you have a flow tied to this, you can also get that confidence score and make a decision. So you could say if the confidence score is less than 70%, notify a manager to take a look at this document before we do any further processing. So if I go back here, it finished analyzing, and I can go in, and again, it's just going to kind of walk me through
Jason,
what
we
I
have
can
10 more minutes left.
Okay, I'll wrap up.
Yeah, in 5 minutes we can wrap up.
Perfect. Yep. All right. So you can see it gives you an idea where it takes a guess of where to expect certain fields, right? So I can start going in here and I can highlight this and then say this is the invoice number. Highlight this, say this is the invoice date, and this is the customer. Right? It's that simple. You hit confirm fields, and then you just have to repeat the steps for the next 5 forms. You can see the red dot means that you need to do it. The subsequent ones are easier because the field names are already there. So you just select the area, say this is the invoice number, invoice date, customer, right? So that you do that several times, and then there's a publish button at the end. So what you end up with is, and I probably should have loaded this up first, but here we go. I'm grabbing the 5 documents. I'm uploading them over here. You're going to see a flicker of data because I've used this one before. It's like a caching thing, or at least sometimes you see it. And it's running a flow. Now let's take a quick look at the flow here. Same steps as before. We're detecting a document that is uploaded to SharePoint in the invoices library. We run this predict, which once you publish it, your service is going to be in here. In this case, we're using processor. We're expecting a PDF, and we're getting the file content from the document library. This step here is nothing. This step is just me figuring out what fields were available to me. And then down here, we're getting metadata using the value, using the file that was created, and we're updating the properties. which is coming from the predict. And these are the invoice number value, client name value, client company value. So if we go back here, you can see that that flow ran and it populated all of the fields. If I go in here and look at Herman Munster, who works at Munster Inc., and we delivered a form processing service to him, we can open this up. You can see this is the Herman Munster document. So if you have a lot of documents and people need to enter that data, if you have a library that someone insists on having, over a dozen fields to populate, you can automate that through this service. So that was the last thing I wanted to show there. Let me see. I'm going to try to open up my presentation again real quick because it did close on me. There we go. All right, so just a quick review. We went over Azure Cognitive Services. We saw the APIs that were available. The site has a ton of different examples of what you can do and what kind of output it generates, and some have pages where you can try out some of the services. We showed the text analytics using sentiment analysis to score an email. We saw computer vision, where we were able to tag and caption, and it was able to even figure out celebrities that were in the shot. We talked about bot framework and Power Virtual Agents, the differences and how to create them. We just looked at AI Builder form processor. One thing I did not talk about with the AI Builder is that there are 9 services underneath the 5 that we looked at that are already trained for you. So there is a business card reader that's already ready for you, a sentiment analysis that's ready for you. And then, if you want more information, there's the Cognitive Services site, the Bot Framework site, you have Power Virtual Agents, and the AI Builder site. These 2 you can get free trials for. I didn't provide any pricing information because that stuff can change on you, but they are additional costs. And then I have at least, these 2 are the blog posts for the sentiment analysis and the tagging. There's an extra one that does sentiment analysis against tweets that I didn't show here. That's on my site. And that's it. And we have time for questions then.
Yeah, we can go ahead with the question.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, please unmute yourself.
No questions.
Anyone have any questions?
All right. Sounds like I did a good job. Yeah, so these services are pretty easy to get started with. You don't need to know machine learning. You don't need to know a lot about AI to get started. You just need to know how to set up the service, and once you start poking around, you can see what Power Automate can pull for you. So I see one question here is how does chatbot pricing work? So the site itself, Power Virtual Agents, has a specific pricing on it. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure what. So let's see, Power Virtual Agent, $1,000. This is US pricing, so I don't know if, depending on where you are, it's going to be different. But in the US, it's $1,000 per month for 2,000 sessions. I'm guessing that's 2,000 separate conversations with the chatbot. So, if somebody's messing around with the bot, that could rack up pretty quickly, depending on the size of your organization. But you really have to do a cost analysis and figure out what is it that the person who's handling this solution manually, what is it that we're paying that person to do, and can that person spend their time doing other work if we create a Power Virtual Agent to replace some of the manual steps. So like a help desk triage. Here in the States, you can burn through $1,000 of a person's time pretty quickly, kind of quickly. And if they're just doing things like figuring out who to assign the ticket to, your bot can do that. Also, you don't necessarily need a bot for certain things. Like sometimes you might just be able to take a form and tie a workflow to it, and you're done. The bot just handles that communication for you and figuring out what branch of the communication to take your customers through. Let's see, what would you prefer for chatbot with AI with cognitive service or Power? So if it's a power user, Power Virtual Agents, because they're not going to know how to build the bot using the bot framework. With bot framework, if you're going to do some complicated logic, I would use the bot framework. So if you're going to be public facing, I would trust a bot framework, something that you can do like a CI/CD deployment with, that you can make some updates to. If you're going to be integrating with other services, third-party services, I would probably feel more comfortable controlling that with the bot framework. I had a customer who wanted a bot on their website and on their Facebook page. So we did that through the bot framework, and the bot was calling some other third-party services. It was also integrating with Q&A Maker to go look up information from a third-party site. So it was really complicated, and I bot framework, I felt more comfortable doing bot framework. At the time, Power Virtual Agents wasn't out, but if it was, I probably wouldn't have done it unless it was a really specific use case that was very minimal.
Yeah, and one more last questions we have.
Bot framework works with Azure Devops. So bot framework is .NET code, .NET or Node, or there is an Azure version. You can create a bot framework bot in Azure. So yeah, those should all be good to go with DevOps integration. Can we expose Power Virtual Agents over different channels? Yes, you can. Sorry, let me see. I know we're running out of time here.
Yeah. Probably we can answer this in a chat.
Yeah.
Other sessions would have been started.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, my time's up. But yes, you can publish it to different channels. And I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you enjoyed the next sessions.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you all. Thanks for joining.